Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
I have to break tradition a little bit here and ask Jimmy Mack if he still has the Mace Windu Hasbro prototype action figure that you scored at the last celebration. You still have that?
What do you think I did? Do you think I did something with it? No, of course I have it. It's in my collection. And something tells me you have some information about it you want to lay on me. Why are you just randomly bringing it up?
Well, I just want to make sure that you hold on to it, because apparently these prototypes can fetch some big bucks. Like this, the 1980s master model of the Bib Fortuna action figure went for £36,000 at an auction. Think of that, £36,000. I don't even know how many American dollars that is. But it's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of pounds.
Yeah. And that's not all. There was a low-gray action figure that fetched £12,000, and an Emperor's Royal Guard reached £28,800. This was all an auction over in the UK. These were models that were produced by Kenner and then sent over to Palitoy. Right, so that's who did the distribution, and I think some of the production. Yeah, the actual production of the toys as they were sold in Europe. For those of you who don't know, but that is a lot of money for a prototype. So I'm just making sure, even though that Mace Windu prototype is an original, that about 10,000 different Star Wars collectors seem to have in their collection. It's a very rare prototype.
Yeah, I know. We saw a few of them at Star Wars Celebration Chicago.
We sure did. And
I don't think it's a one of a kind. You know, the funny thing is, here's the funny thing about being a collector is, sometimes the rules are there ain't no rules. Yeah. And I spotted this Mace Windu Power of the Force prototype, Power of the Force 2, I should say, the modern line. Actually, I think it would be Episode 1. That was its own line, wasn't it? And so it was an Episode 1 Mace Windu, and I saw it there on the floor at Star Wars Celebration Orlando and had to have it. $150 for an action figure. I have to have it. I just loved it. It was really cool. It was like kind of this interesting Mace Windu that resembled our friend Sheldon Norton in so many ways.
Yeah, he was pink. I mean, the figure is pink.
Right.
And so in bald. And Sheldon Norton is also pink and bald. Right. And Canadian.
And Canadian. I had a feeling this action figure was Canadian, too.
Well, it kind of looked that way.
It was like made in some Canadian's basement by the thousands. Because, I showed it to Ann Newman. And Ann Newman is the collections manager at Rancho Obi-Wan and one of my best friends in the world, quite honestly. And I showed it to her, and Ann always cuts to the chase with me. She never messes around. She never sugarcoats anything. She looked at it, and she goes, "Think it's real?" And just kind of gave me that look, like she knew the answer, but wasn't going to tell me. She wanted me to figure it out for myself.
Right.
I think her next question was, why did you buy this?
Well, I mean, you figure, okay, prototype, there's not going to be, there could certainly be more than one, right? You would stand to reason that there could be a couple. But, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I mean, just about every one of those booths at Star Wars Celebration. Well, no, the ones, no, not every booth. What I'm saying is the ones that purport to have the high-end stuff, the ones with the glass cases. Yeah. And you're seeing some stuff that may or may not have been actually used in the filming of one of the movies. There's always a little shelf that has some of these prototypes, these one colored, they look like they're made out of crayon wax almost. Yeah. And inevitably, there's a Mace Windu Episode 1 figure in there. There
the pink one with the black cloak and the clear saber.
That's right. It had the clear saber.
So you can imagine me I got some money to burn in my pocket. I see an action figure that looks like Sheldon Norton, and he's holding a clear lightsaber. I just melted, and I go, "Here's my money, take it." So Anne asks me. She says, "Why did you buy it?" And my answer seemed good enough to satisfy Anne, and I said, "Well, I like it. It's cool. It looks cool. I like it." And she goes, "Good enough. Then it's worth whatever you want it to be worth."
Yep.
But yeah, she was far from confirming the actual legitimacy of the item itself. I'm sure if I showed it to a Gus Lopez or a Duncan Jenkins, they would just look at that and start laughing at me.
Oh, those guys have written whole books on prototypes. I mean,
I know.
Yeah, they've literally written the book on Star Wars prototypes. But Steve Sansweet himself said one time that what's this worth? It's worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it. That's what it's worth. And in the case of the Sheldon Norton / Mace Windu bootleg prototype figure, at that moment, it was worth $150.
It was, just because Sheldon was there, and then I could hold the action figure up next to him. And it really, the resemblance was, it was uncanny.
Oh, it really was.
Uncanny.
It looked more like Sheldon than it did Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson. But anyway, so that's a pretty impressive haul for whoever got those. Now, these particular prototypes from back in the day, they were actually sculpted at a larger scale because, they had to allow for, shrinkage when they reproduced them. But anyway, that's a lot of money. So $36,000 for Bib Fortuna, $12,000 for Low Gray, and another $28,000 for the Emperor's Royal Guard. By the way, they're all sans soft goods. So, when they were doing the original sculpting, they didn't have, like the cloak for Bib Fortuna or the cape for the Imperial Royal Guard. Not even the mushy, rubbery hood for Low Gray. So it didn't even come with accessories and still fetched that kind of money. Amazing. Amazing. But anyway, you're here for the best in Star Wars talk. So glad to be back in the cockpit of the first regular Rebel Force Radio since the big celebration in Chicago. And if you missed out on that, we've got a number of shows that have been released recently, so make sure you check those out. Most recently, the live show from Reggie's, which was a blast. You can listen to that. Also, our Lulu show is available. And we did a fantastic, if I do say so myself, and I say that because I was obviously supported by Jimmy Mack and our pal Paul Bateman, a great teardown, and I don't mean that in a bad way, a dissection, a total review of all of the footage that was shown of the upcoming Disney Plus exclusive series, The Mandalorian. We go through that panel with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and review the footage that was not shown to the streaming audience. It was exclusive to those that were in the auditorium, but we had our ways and we were able to make sure that Paul got to see that, and we just broke it all down with Paul, and it was a lot of fun to hear the enthusiasm for Star Wars in Paul Bateman. So check that out. What else do we got going on the feed? Well, we've got I know what we have. We've got the YouTube channel, the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel, which is just constantly brimming with content. And this is, by the way, the May the 4th weekend.
This is Duchess Satine of Mandalore. On behalf of my people, may the 4th be with you, always.
But we haven't talked about everything that happened at Celebration. It was a whirlwind of 5 days there in downtown Chicago. We didn't talk about how my flight got canceled.
Which was, let me tell you something, man. Wow. The Force works in mysterious ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What a gift to have you there for the entire run of the convention. You were supposed to bail on Sunday night, and as it turned out, Sunday night was the wildest and craziest night for me and our crew and you and everyone, and that wouldn't have happened if you left and caught that flight, but you got snowed in.
How do you get snowed in April when the day before it was like sunny and 60?
Yeah. Well, in the Chicago area, in the month of April, you're dealing with a tug of war between two seasons, and all you can do is just be a spectator and try to stay out of the way, because that is an epic battle on a scale much larger than anything Thanos can bring to the planet Earth. Let me tell you. Yeah. So everyone got a good taste of that. The schizophrenic weather that happens in April in Chicago. I'm so happy I was able to share that with so many Star Wars fans who sometimes wonder, why is Jimmy Mack so grumpy this week on the show? Hey, now you know.
Now you know. And it wasn't just me. I mean, there were a number of people. You know, when you have a convention straddle a weekend like that where it goes into the following week, you know, into Monday, a lot of us were planning to leave Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Yeah. Well, the Force had other plans. None of us did. Glenn Nelson, our pal Glenn, he was stranded for another day.
Excellent.
So, yeah, and it turned out it did. I mean, at the time, you know, because you're all like, you're packed, you're ready to go, you're in the mindset, okay, I got a couple more hours and then going to get in the taxi and go. And so it's an adjustment, but once I accepted the fact that there I was going to be for another day, I was totally fine. I was fine. But it was an adjustment. So we didn't tell you about that until just now. We also didn't tell you about an encounter that I had, which was just so much fun. It was this was, I think, Saturday. When was the Clone Wars panel? Was that Saturday or was that Sunday? That was Saturday.
I think that was Sunday.
Oh, it was Sunday.
The Clone Wars panel was Sunday.
So it wasn't too long.
We were going to attend it, but we put it off because you had to reschedule your flight. You know, that's when it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
And so I was hanging out with the Mando mashups over at the bar car there, the bar cart, and we were having a good old time while you were on the phone and dealing with all that with Glenn right next to you. And you guys were both struggling to get your you-know-what together. And so we were getting it on over there with the Mando mashups. Those guys are always a blast. So you had time then to handle all of your travel arrangements. But unfortunately, we missed the Clone Wars panel. And if there was a panel we should have been in, should have been the Clone Wars panel. So I hope later in the show we'll have time to go through that trailer that debuted, that Season 7 Clone Wars trailer, and take it shot by shot and tell you what we see in all of that action and what we think is going to be happening here in Season 7 of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to break that down. We will hopefully this week. If not, we'll get to it. We've got all the way until November when that debuts. So we didn't tell you about that. We also didn't tell you about how I was on the floor of the convention there, right in the dealer room, the main exhibition hall, and minding my own business, you know, keeping a low profile, looking for some things. I was just, I was looking to spend some money.
Yeah, so you're shopping.
Yes, I was shopping, and I had a one of our listeners here. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can pull this up. Where was this guy? Because he wrote in July. No, he wrote. Maybe he just wrote me. Hold on one sec.
We have been getting a lot of correspondence lately in the wake of Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and between going through all that and all the content that we gathered and created during that week, we are a little bit behind in responding to some of our emails. So, be patient and keep sending in all of your cool correspondence to us at show@rebelforceradio.com.
So I'm walking around the exhibition hall with Rebel Force Radio listener Andy Nadeau. And Andy's been listening to us for a good while now. And so we were just chatting, and I was just kind of giving an idea what I might be looking for. And all of a sudden, I feel this arm around me. And at first I thought it was this Andy guy. And I'm like, I just met you. Like, this is a little fresh. And so the fingers on the arm are kind of like tickling me a little bit, on my shoulder. I'm like, all right, that's it. And I turn around and I'm staring face into a TIE fighter helmet.
Oh.
So it's a dude, he's in all black, like black shirt, black pants, and a big TIE pilot helmet.
You're like, what the hell is
What is going on? I thought I was being pinched. I didn't know what was going on.
You're checking your wallet.
Yeah. And the helmet lifts up, and I'm staring into the handsome face of Anakin Skywalker, Matt Lanter. Matt was doing the old celeb trick of cruising the convention floor, helmeted, incognito-like. Right. Which has been done by, Jim, you and Bill saw Hayden Christensen, speaking of Anakin Skywalker, doing that back at Celebration 2. Bill actually saw him.
Yeah, I really think that that's when that was all sort of established as a way to do it. Was Hayden was the guy brave enough to say, give me one of those buckets. He put it on and just walked right out there, T-shirt and jeans with the Stormtrooper helmet. And came back after about an hour or so and was like, I'll be damned, I fit right in.
Yeah, he looked like TK42 Walmart there in the jeans and the T-shirt and just the helmet. But anyway, so I'm looking at Matt, and, I immediately, I was so glad that I realized what was happening. He was, you didn't want to be recognized and have a bunch of people asking for autographs and stuff. And so,
selfies.
So I just kind of leaned into the hug, the embrace a little bit, and I kind of liked it. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of liked it. I sort of leaned in, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, so good to see you. How's your wife and how's the baby? And the baby's like 15 months. Oh, it's the best time of your life, man. You're gonna love it. You're gonna having a good time. Yeah, having a great time. All right, man. We'll see you later. And then the helmet went down, and he was gone.
Wow.
But I tell you, it is it's not just a highlight of Star Wars Celebration Chicago, but it's up there in the top 5 of all-time Celebration highlights. So
wow.
He's just such a sweet guy, and for him to take the risk of blowing his cover, and Andy was there the whole time, just watching this.
Oh, he didn't realize what was happening.
Oh no, he did know. Yeah, he did know.
He knew it was Matt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he emailed, and now Andy was there at Reggie's, and he said, thank you for taking interest in the podcast that I started. He has a podcast, and I don't think he mentions the name of it, but Top 5. He has this podcast, and I'm not gonna. I'll find it. I will do some research since we're talking about it here, and we'll give it a plug on the Facebook. But they take, top 5 this, top 5 that, and he and his 2 brothers, they chat about it. But anyway, he says, seeing Matt Lanter stop by to say hi to you was just pure joy. I've heard stories about celebrities walking the floor like that, and it was so cool to witness it. So that was, from, Andy Nadeau. It goes by the name, I don't know, it's Andy Nadeau, and then he signed it Drew. So I'm guessing Andrew. Sometimes it's Andy, sometimes it's Drew.
Yeah,
you never know who you're talking to. But it was so cool. It was really, really cool. And
you guys have always bonded. I mean, you're like the Ohio boys.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Matt from Maslin, his wife Angela from Akron.
Right.
So he married a good Ohio girl. Didn't let all that Hollywood stuff go to his head.
And then, 10 years ago when we were getting to know Matt for the first time, you actually traveled out to see him, I think at his sister's house.
That was at his aunt's house.
At his aunt's house. And you were out there and hanging out, I think, in the guest bedroom upstairs talking.
Yeah, it was wild. It was so surreal. I think we've got that interview recently on the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. So that was just cool. That was cool, and that's one of those things. It took about 30 seconds of his time, but I'll remember it forever. And he's just an awesome guy.
I'm amazed he spotted you walking through that crowded convention show floor with the bucket on the head and everything. I mean, that's a pro move. If he can do something like that, he definitely knows what he's doing with a TIE fighter helmet on.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
He might be more schooled at this than we think. Maybe he does this a lot and we just don't know it.
Yeah, or maybe that girl from junior high was right, and I'm so unique looking that I stick out anywhere. Was that an Ugnaught? Look at that cosplay. Oh, that's Swank.
Oh, no, come on.
That's Swank. That's no Ugnaught.
Very handsome young man, sir. But, if you're looking for that interview with Jason and Matt sitting up in the guest bedroom at Matt's aunt's house, you can find it, RFR on YouTube. Just look for In the Cantina Star Wars interviews, Matt Lanter at home with Anakin. And you can hear it right now. Yeah. But finish listening to this show first.
Yeah, please do.
This is Matt Lanter, voice of Anakin Skywalker on Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force.
We'll always be with you.
Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force.
No one's ever really gone.
So I have a note here that tells me that seeing the Rise of Skywalker trailer on the big screen during the panel, and then later multiple times on the flat screen in the hotel room, is not where it ended for you.
No. Me and my son Dylan, we've been going to see the Marvel films on opening day for 10 years now. He's 16, so since he was 6 years old. And the tradition continued. We were there this past Friday for Marvel Endgame. Mind-blowing. And what a satisfying conclusion to the MCU as it has been standing for all these years now.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. God, I would never, ever come close to spoiling anything. But
I've heard people threatened with their lives over spoilers about this. I have never seen such fervent anti-spoiler mania as I have with this movie.
Let me tell you, opening day, I'm standing in line for popcorn for me and my son. And these kids, there's a whole group of them right behind me in line, and they're all popping off with all these spoilers left and right. And I turned around and I gave them a death stare. A wicked death stare. It made the mom so nervous. She just was like, Catwoman dies. That did break the tension a little bit, okay? So that broke the tension a little bit. But I looked at him like, you little, what's, if you even come close. As I'm standing outside the theater door at this moment. How dare you? So, yeah, I get that. But, and knowing that we shouldn't be diving too deep into Marvel on the Star Wars show, I just want to say that it is one of those great film experiences that elicited emotional responses from me.
Oh, wait a minute. Come on. Are we talking about tears?
I was reviewing our show notes for 2019, and I noted earlier in the year a hot topic on this show was crying at Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of people talking about crying during Star Wars Celebration. Yeah. I got during Star Wars Celebration, I got the feels many, many times. Many times. And I might have even had a moment or two where I welled up. There was one moment on the show floor, which I can't even talk about here on this show, which was a very personal moment between me and someone who had a massive loss in his life, a total stranger, too. And me and him connected on a level that just completely floored me and really amplified the power of fans coming together, you know. I mean, I think that gets overplayed a lot of times, but I was right there in the crosshairs, man, and me and this guy, we bonded over Star Wars and had an intense personal moment about a significant loss in his life that he was coming to terms with, and he had a very human moment right in front of me, and I, of course, was completely enveloped in the aura of his moment and joined him with the emotional response. That was huge for me.
But see, that's different, right? It is
different.
Real life, that's reality.
It is real life and it is reality. But the reason why I think I was so open to accepting his personal pain at that moment is because we were there for Star Wars. And he was in full Darth Maul regalia, which made the whole situation quite surreal, but still the personal weight of it was not lost on me at all. And it was one of those moments that really did a lot to make that weekend very significant for me, especially that moment, that day. Because right after that, I went over to the Norse Legion booth where you and my brother and Kevin Lyle and Glenn Nelson, you presented me.
And Chris Mocked as well.
And Chris Mocked, you presented me with a giant Star Wars Archives book that weighs 50 pounds.
14, but depends on how many beers you've had.
Well, no, you know what? This was on day 4 of the event. I was starting to wear down a little bit. I looked at my phone and did the math, and I walked 33 miles during the course of that celebration week. Yeah. From Wednesday through, though. I'm counting Wednesday because I was there for setup. I helped Kevin set up his booth and everything. So I was in there before the show doors opened and everything, and I got to see Star Wars Celebration at its bare bones as it was being constructed around me, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you definitely get your steps in at these things. So I mean, they're good for, they're good for your health. You know, you can tell if anybody out there is telling you you're wasting your time at these things, say no. 30-some miles. That's incredible.
That's incredible. But I got to tell you that the emotional resonance of the Avengers Endgame movie, as it came to its conclusion, I felt it. And at one point, a single tear rolled down my left cheek. Wow. And it was, I was having a moment. Yes, I was having a moment. And we were wearing the 3D glasses, so I was really relieved that my son wasn't watching me cry. But I didn't look at him. For all I know, he was having a moment as well. But, and so I'm sitting there and this is happening to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been so critical about Star Wars fans who say they cry about everything. I mean, everyone's saying they're crying at Celebration, all these crying going on. It seems foreign territory for me. Well, I don't think I can make any statements about that anymore after watching Avengers Endgame, and I hope that I get that same emotional response when I'm watching Star Wars Episode 9. But, I mean, it just goes to show you the value of the work that went into the MCU, the way it's been plotted out, the way that the actors have been able to embody the characters and create characters that we really give a crap about. Yeah. And so I'm expecting a similar moment with Episode 9. I almost want it to happen. I can't believe I'm saying it. I want to cry now.
We stand
at Star Wars Episode 9. I'm telling you, man. I want to cry at Star Wars Episode 9.
You're going to feel ripped off if it doesn't bring you to tears.
No, because I don't cry at Star Wars movies. I just never really.
But you want to. You're saying you want to. This is a desire you have.
Well, after experiencing it in the MCU, I was like, wow, the magic of movies is still alive and vibrant and can be applied to these big franchises that have been around for a long time.
Now, wait a minute, though. Okay, hold on a second. This Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going on for 10 years. It is a tremendous feat. I don't think that there has been anything accomplished quite like this in terms of scope. I mean, you look at the Bond franchise. For the most part, they're one-off adventures. They're not, tied to a singular canon. They also involve, not nearly as many characters as something like Marvel. I mean,
the character doesn't evolve film from film.
Right, exactly. So there's really, I don't think, anything that compares to what's been accomplished with the MCU. Whether you liked all the movies or you didn't, I mean, it was the kind of stuff that comic book fans only could dream of when they would go see the occasional superhero film. Just dream that it would kind of span out and encompass all these individuals. And the way they accomplished it with these one-off films and this thread that they would weave through and then the team-up films. I mean, it was just absolute genius. It was just phenomenal. Hats off to everybody involved. Hats off to the studios for having the foresight to allow this to happen and not, you think about how Tim Burton at one point wanted to establish the Batman films, and they kept jumping around different directors and different actors, and it just eventually went the way as a lot of franchises did. You get 3 or 4 movies in and you're done. I mean, this is an incredible accomplishment. There's no question. And as a Star Wars fan, we have a tradition as in Star Wars when Titanic became the #1 grossing movie of all time. George Lucas put the ad in Variety that tipped the hat to James Cameron for reaching that milestone, and then it went back and forth, and then as subsequent Star Wars movies came out, it took back the title, and then the title went back. I think wasn't it E.T. and Star Wars went back and forth there with those little ads that George and Spielberg would run back and forth with one another.
Yeah, there's something traditional about that. In the trades, they put them in the trades like Variety
right.
and Hollywood Reporter and things like that.
I want to keep the tradition alive, and as we stand on the eve of the latest Avengers movie overtaking the record set by The Force Awakens, hats off, right? Fine. All set, all good. I'm going to catch up on these movies one of these days. I really am.
It's all good. Listen, somebody asked me on Facebook what I thought about this, about Star Wars losing its crown inevitably to Avengers Endgame. And I just, my response was, hey, these movies, these MCU movies are really connecting with film goers these days. And I'm so happy to be living in an era to see Star Wars and Marvel having such successful mainstream runs. I would have never have dreamt this possible, a few, 20 years ago or whatever. And, when I think about those dark times and everything, but, I also acknowledge the fact that these records, these box office records, are made to be broken. These ticket prices go up in value. It costs more and more to go to a movie every time. Every year it seems like there's constant add-ons with 3D and IMAX and all of that stuff, and you go to those theaters where they're serving dinners and stuff. I mean, it's insanity. The box office value is being inflated. So I think if you want to find the true box office champ of all time, you look for those numbers that are done post-inflation. You see through time that the true box office champ will be found in those numbers when adjusted for inflation. The true box office champ is always going to be Gone with the Wind, followed by Star Wars. And then I think rounding out the top 5 would be Titanic, E.T., and Jaws. And I believe those are your all-time box office champs. You can look it up on Box Office Mojo. I'm not going to do it right now. But that's how you see who the real champion is through time. Because if you look at these numbers now, they're so inflated. You have to look at the numbers adjusted for inflation. As a matter of fact, George Lucas wrote a book about this called Blockbusting with Lucy Autry Wilson. If you could track down that book, solid gold. What a great bathroom reader that one is.
Oh, yeah. Anywhere you pick it up, you just flip open to any page, and you're going to hear a great story about a classic film, not just a classic film, but a blockbuster film. And, its place in the pantheon of all the big major blockbusters. I have to say, because I was remembering. So if you do yourself a favor, we'll try to get these up either on the website or on Facebook. But I'm looking at all these ads. So this goes back, this tradition in Variety, this goes back to when the original release of Star Wars beat out Jaws as the all-time box office champ. And Jim, I don't know if you can picture the ad, but it's R2 on a beach catching. He's got a little fishing rod on one of his legs, and he's catching Jaws. Jaws is being pulled up, and the note says, "Dear George, last week Star Wars moved ahead of Jaws in domestic film rentals. Your hyperspace performance package really did the trick. Congratulations to the Cantina crowd and all the forces of your imagination that made Star Wars so worthy of the throne. Wear it well." And then E.T. overtook it. And I don't have that ad, but then I have the ad once, I think it was Return of the Jedi, beat out E.T., and it was a picture of E.T. It was putting the crown back on R2-D2's dome. It says, "Dear George, congratulations for renewing the most enduring motion picture in cinema history." And that could have been maybe a re-release of A New Hope, possibly.
Right. And George and Steven love this stuff, this back and forth stuff. There was a time, it was reported, I think it was Spielberg who said this in an interview, that he would go over to Lucas's place, and they would sit there and look at each other's websites. Like, they would go to StarWars.com and look at that, and then they would go to, whatever Steven was looking at. And
you know who that was? Wasn't that a story that Kevin Smith told?
It may have been, yeah.
That Kevin, he was, it was either he experienced this or someone else did, that George showed up to Steven's house on Thanksgiving with like a pie, and then they spent, like the whole afternoon on each other's websites.
Yeah. Sitting there with, you picture it like, remember the old commercials for that game Battleship from Milton Bradley?
Oh, yeah.
Where they would show the kids sitting on a table and they would be like back to back with each other. I picture like George and Steven at a table with their laptops, like back to back with each other. And they're just, oh, really? Hey, Steven, this link doesn't work. Stuff like that. He's like, "George, come on. What are you doing? Look at this stuff. You don't even know what's going on with your own website. What are you doing?"
I'm looking at the ad right here. This was my favorite. This was when Titanic took over to be the all-time box office champ. And you have all the Star Wars characters that are on the Titanic as it's sinking. Jabba is holding a martini in a proper martini glass. You got Princess Leia doing the rose, and DiCaprio at the bow of the ship. King of the world, with Han Solo holding her up. You got 3PO saying to R2, "I'm sure this is all your fault," as it sinks, and then it just says, "Jim, congratulations, George." So anyway, there's this long tradition. In fact, it continued with Jurassic Park and the Marvel Studios. So when the Jurassic World took on and became the I think it was the title was the quickest to reach a certain milestone, there was an ad of a T-Rex surrounded by the Marvel characters kind of pointing, and it says Marvel Studios congratulates Jurassic World on being the new opening weekend king. So it's a great tradition, good sportsmanship all around, and you know what? we'll see what happens when Episode 9 comes out, right?
I saw a fantastic image online that would be perfect for this type of ad you speak of. I could see Lucasfilm putting this into Variety or something, where it's Rey with Luke's lightsaber, and instead of passing it off to Luke, you see Iron Man's palm there, reaching out for it.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
That nails it.
Yeah. I love
Okay,
that.
by the way,
Yeah.
top 10 highest grossing films adjusted for inflation. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. This is recent? This is current?
This is as of the last time they looked into this kind of stuff.
All right.
We have Gone with the Wind, followed by Avatar and Titanic. Number 4, Star Wars, the original. Followed by The Sound of Music at number 5, E.T. at 6. Then, rounding out the top 10 with 10 Commandments at 7, Dr. Zhivago at 8, Jaws at 9, and Star Wars The Force Awakens at number 10.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
Those are the latest numbers we're getting here at the RFR Semi-Factual Bureau. Powered by Wikipedia.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, wait a minute. Hold on. Before we move on, this is.
I need to get back.
Trail.
Hold on.
Bring it back.
We have to bring it back. Let's reel it back in. The reason we started talking about the Avengers in the first place is because the last trailer I saw in IMAX before the film started was that of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
So you saw this in IMAX.
I saw it in IMAX, real big, too. And it's very impressive in IMAX, extremely impressive in IMAX. Rey's backwards force leap over the incoming TIE interceptor was amazing. Oh, and by the way, somebody did have to say on our YouTube comments when we revealed the Episode 9 trailer at Star Wars Celebration, somebody had to say, "It is not Kylo's TIE interceptor that you were referring to from Episode 9. That was the TIE silencer. I figured you would know this because it was in slow motion." That's what we meant, okay?
That's right.
That's what we meant.
All right.
Sometimes, listen, the slow motion sometimes isn't slow enough for us. So,
right.
But I have to say it was extremely impressive. And the things that stand out so much for me for that trailer is I love the close arm Kylo Ren gives to that assailant, where he's like sticking that side blade of his saber into the guy's gut as he takes him down with his...
Looks like that might be a Knight of Ren.
Yeah, it does kind of, doesn't it?
There's new rumors that point to the fact that indeed the Knights of Ren, all 6 of them, I believe they're saying that, is it 5 or 6? I can't remember. But they're going to be fairly prominent in this film.
I hope
again,
so.
Just rumors.
I hope so. We, just teasing us with these guys throughout this trilogy is really leaving some of your best content on the shelf, and we want to see it all here right now. I mean, let's see it all. I want it all there in front of us. We can take it. We can handle it. Really, we can. You want to give us a 3-hour Star Wars movie like Avengers Endgame? Jason, you know the size of my bladder is minuscule, and I did not get up once, and I had a large icy at my side the whole time.
Oh, amazing. I don't know how you pulled that off.
Fastest 3 hours I ever spent in a movie theater in my life. And I wasn't even in the comfy reclinable chairs.
Oh,
really? Suffer theater ass from hell, but that was okay. I adjusted. I shifted. I took my wallet out of my back pocket. So those are the things you have to do to make it through a good movie. And Avengers Endgame is a good movie, and it was very compelling, despite the fact it was 3 hours long. I was locked in the whole time. They threw a lot at you. They were able to fit it in, make it all cohesive, and flow well. And I think the same thing can be done as you try to wrap up 3 trilogies with Episode 9. Like I said, this is a huge task, and I can't wait to see him pull it off. So, long story short, the Episode 9 trailer in IMAX was mind-blowing, blew me away, and I couldn't believe how quiet everyone was after the Star Wars Celebration experience and being in there at the Wintrust Arena and having that crowd all energized and screaming and shouting and stuff. I wanted to do the same thing after seeing it in IMAX, but it was like, like stone cold silent in that place.
Really?
I'm screaming in my head, and it was.
Was it indifference, or was it just they were blown away by what they were seeing?
It's just a trailer. People probably see. Anyone who cared had already seen.
Well,
it.
that's true, but not in IMAX, and it made an impression of you or on you in IMAX.
Usually, trailers elicit a negative response when it creates that emotion from the audience. They'll show something, and you usually hear somebody in the back going, "Well, that's going to suck." I mean, there's always somebody, right? It's usually me. Let's just be honest here. But it wasn't like indifference. It was just like, maybe if I started something. Maybe if I got up and went, yeah, maybe everyone else would have jumped in.
You could have let it off. You should have let it off.
I should have.
Yeah.
I should have.
Come on, say it loud, say it proud.
I'm in there with my 16-year-old. He'll be like, "Dad."
Oh, yeah. You embarrassed him again, just like you did Michael when you sang in front of Steve Sansweet that day. Embarrassed him. Dad.
Well, Michael was 6 at that point. I could get away with stupid dad stuff when you're 6.
But you still embarrassed him. He still had the good sense to be embarrassed of you at 6 years old.
Oh, he was just playing along.
I'm sure.
At least that's what he told me after.
Yeah. But you did mention the Knights of Ren, and some of the latest rumors are that they will be featured in the next film. And, of course, I love these rumors because it's like, they'll just say that, they're going to be present in the battle. But no details on how prevalent they're going to be.
Yeah, my
so they're
sources
going
tell
on a
me.
limb. Yeah, my sources tell me your source is the damn trailer. That's what your source is. We see him right there.
And the voice is in your head.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll have more of that kind of thing coming up. But we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the fact that this weekend is a big one for Star Wars fans. This is May the 4th.
Orbiting the planet at maximum velocity.
This is Captain Tarkin of the Republic Army issuing the following order to listeners across the galaxy. May the 4th be with you. That is all for now. You may proceed with the operation.
Geez, we're halfway through the show already, and we've not even gotten to the meat of it all. But this is the great thing that happens. The best part of the show is the stuff that we do completely off the rundown. Yeah. Hardly any of this was on the rundown.
None of it.
This is magic, people. Hey,
all my pre-show prep down the drain again.
Oh, no, not at all. Eventually we get through it.
3-hour movie like Avengers Endgame, 3-hour podcast.
Yep. RFR Endgame. Yeah, RFR Endgame this week.
We're going to turn to dust at the end.
Yeah, right. Who's going to do the snap? Well, I got a list of a few names that might do the snap. All right. So, as we've mentioned here many, many times, Jimmy Mack hard at work at the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. Tons and tons and tons of content being released. Sometimes multiple videos a day coming out of that YouTube channel as we go through 13 years of Star Wars podcasting. Back to the old days of the old show, and then, of course, all the way up through some of the latest and greatest stuff. And there was one thing, sort of the Rebel Force Radio, as it kind of was born out of the previous show. It spawned this incredible documentary that our pal Sheldon Norton had been working on for years. He'd been actually following us for a long time. He initially had this idea of like a little mini doc, like a little 7-8 minute thing. Do you remember that when he sent us the sort of his the reel? Because he's done some great work. He's an extraordinarily talented editor and filmmaker.
What is this, a Star Wars show?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that was his original pitch was, go to a convention with you. I think it was C2E2 with you guys, get some footage and put together this little documentary. Well, that turned into 7 years, I think.
Oh, he followed us around so much. He gathered so much footage and just went everywhere with us. It was, really, Sheldon became a member of the family. Sheldon and his son Chase became members of my family through this process.
And he put together this incredible documentary, and we showed it at Celebration Anaheim.
We rushed him into that, though. It wasn't ready. There was so much material for Sheldon to go through. And, I don't want to say we rushed him. That's really not fair. Sheldon felt very ready with that, but I think we've saved the best for last, quite honestly. And as we approach May the 4th, we made an effort to continue to go through all the footage Sheldon shot, and we found some solid gold in there, and we're so happy that we're finally able to bring it to you guys on our YouTube channel with the Filoni Factor and the Ranch. So, Jason.
Yes.
Filoni Factor and the Ranch is essentially, it's a sneak peek of the When the Galaxy Listens director's cut, which is coming on May the 4th.
Perfectly timed.
Perfectly timed.
Yeah.
Perfectly timed. And it features some great footage there that we've been sitting on for a long time, and we're really finally ready to lay it on you and let you come along with us as we leave no fan behind, and we visit Skywalker Ranch.
And some familiar faces show up and give their take on Rebel Force Radio.
The production value of their show is incredible. They have a great banter between the two of them. The two of them are nuts. Absolutely. And their personalities are both very varied and different. They combat with each other. It's, in some ways, like they would be characters in the Star Wars universe. It's not that far a throw for me to imagine them as radio hosts somewhere in the galaxy far, far away. I just give you the whole thing here of my download on those two. Here they are at this kind of table like you see set up at, a picnic, folded out legs, and they've got these little mechanisms laid out. I'm like, wow, look at this stuff, and this is how you do it. This is really amazing that this works. And they had a cardboard box that they shipped everything in, and someone had fried the board, like one of the computers had completely fried. They were just... It had all the elegance that the Millennium Falcon does. It's not much to look at, but it's got it where it counts, and that kind of sums up Rebel Force Radio.
Oh, well, that's very kind. So Dave Filoni offering his take on Rebel Force Radio. Of course, the box is infamous, and that goes back to one of those early conventions in Dallas, one of the Fan Days events, which were such
Plano,
great
Texas.
effect. Yeah, they're such great events. And it was the first time that we were really doing. We met up at celebrations before, but this was the first time that we were really making it kind of an event that Rebel Force Radio was at the time the Forcecast was going to be there. And so I remember talking to Jim, and at that time I had most of the gear. And we were trying to figure out, what we were going to do to, how to get it there, and we decided that what we were going to do, we were actually given this advice: just pack it up in a box and ship it, and just ship it to the warehouse, not to the warehouse. What was it? The shop.
Yeah, the shop.
Ship it to the shop.
Ship it to the shop.
And we did. And the condition of that box, thank God I'm a pretty good packer, because I don't know what those delivery guys were doing with that box. They were dribbling it up and down the street. I don't know. They were shooting it with the shotguns. I don't know what they were doing. But this thing had more holes than SpongeBob by the time it showed up. And
surprised any of that gear worked.
Oh, my gosh. The box was just in bad shape. And
I just always remember that moment. Filoni's walking by. He's wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey.
Yeah, this is the end of the convention.
Yeah, and
this is the end of the convention. We're packing up.
Slowly strolling by and acting like he's going to walk past us. And then he just comes back, stands right in front of you and me as we're both like buried in a nest of tangled wires and all this stuff.
You know what 3PO is like at the end of Empire Strikes Back?
It was that.
Help! I think I'm melting. This is all your fault.
Yeah.
And he just shook his head back and forth. I think he dropped a, you guys.
Yeah, he's
something like that.
He's like, look at this display. Look at what's going on here. Look at this. It's very sad. It's very sad what's happening here. Yeah. So and then that inspired that famous drawing that he did of us with the cardboard box in between.
And you could see that animated on the Filoni Factor and the Ranch. When the Galaxy Listens presents the Filoni Factor and the Ranch, directed by Sheldon Norton. I think Sheldon did the animation on that and everything. It's really cool, like it kind of as a 3D effect.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I too I couldn't be happier that this version of the film is coming out, because we had seen at one time a version of the movie, of the documentary, that had some of this stuff in it. And talking about an emotional response, Jim, I remember you texting me saying you were on the couch with Wendy. You had a bottle of Skywalker wine.
This is true.
You polished off, and you just it was a real, because it was. I mean, this was, I think at the time this came out, but it was getting close to 10 years worth of work that you and I have put into this whole adventure, and to see it kind of, summarized in this way, and also seeing our children grow up right on camera.
Yes.
Was incredible. I mean, there's a shot of me with my son Parker, who's 6 now. He was about 2 years old, 1.5, 2 years old when Sheldon came to the house, and your boys growing up right in front of you on the screen. It was just tremendous time capsule.
It is. It really is. And I find it to be extremely emotional when I watched it, at least the first time. Now, it could have been that full bottle of Skywalker Ranch Pinot, but, it was more a moment of realizing that, wow, my gratification of this show is shared by other people, and that was kind of a revelation for me. And it was nice to sort of dip my toe back into those waters during Star Wars Celebration Chicago, which was nothing but an excellent encounter. We turn every corner, and it's like, oh, my God, it's the guys from Blues Harvest. It's Andy Lith and the guys. And we're all having a beer together and taking funny pictures together. And it even got to one point when we were standing there on that Saturday or that Sunday, and I mean, people started lining up then. Yeah. And I saw the girl was standing right there, and she's dressed in the Leia buns and everything, and
Star Puffs. Let's keep it Kenner canon.
Right, and she was the daughter of my friend Marty Zivin, who had passed away, a radio guy I knew in Chicago, and everyone knew Marty. And he was really a pioneer when you want to talk about internet radio. Marty Zivin was the guy, and to be able to meet his daughter there at that moment, she's a huge Star Wars fan, and to have that connection. I mean, it was just like, it was that same day I was with that Darth Maul, and then all of this was happening. It was an incredible experience. So that's what leads me to this place right now, where I'm at, and they call it the post-celebration glow. And my advice, if you want to continue that glow, avoid Twitter at all costs.
Especially if you're Mark Hamill these days. We'll be talking about that coming up. But if you want to continue in the celebration glow, please jump on YouTube on Saturday, May 4th, and watch When the Galaxy Listens, the director's cut. You don't want to miss it. And if you think you've seen it before, you haven't seen it like this. This is the version that Sheldon had in mind all along. So it's been such a long time since I've seen it. In fact, you remember he gave us a sneak peek link, and that link hasn't been active for quite some time. So I got to tell you, I'm excited to see this, because it's been a while since I've seen this version of When the Galaxy Listens.
And the cool thing is that we've been culling up some footage there to create, I think, a couple more episodes to extend the streaming series just a little bit further. So,
oh, very nice.
Some really nice stuff featuring just a lot of great Star Wars fans, having very little to do with you and me, but just a real warm and fuzzy viewing experience. If you're a Star Wars fan, you will enjoy it very much, and that's pretty much the trademark of When the Galaxy Listens, and that all has to do with this great community that we've been able to build, and of course Sheldon and his delicate touch as a filmmaker. He is one of the best.
He sure is. Speaking of one of the best partners we've had here at Rebel Force Radio for many, many, many years are our good friends at Audible. Audible. I couldn't live without Audible. I have such a long commute, sometimes 90 minutes just to get to the day job.
Right.
And man, oh man, do I love having access to Audible's incredible library of great books and special programs. Because listening, when I'm in the car, I have no choice. I'm captive. So unless Jim and I are recording an episode of Rush Hour for our Patreon exclusive, I have nothing to do. Right? So I want to multitask. I want to find a way to better myself in this downtime. And listening is one of the ways to do it. It makes us smarter. It makes us more connected. It makes us better partners, parents, leaders. And there's no better place to start listening than at Audible. And there's no better place to find Star Wars audiobooks than Audible. You're going to get more than ever before. Now, Audible members choose 3 titles every month. That's 1 audiobook plus 2 Audible originals that you can't hear anywhere else. You're not going to jump on iTunes and download these. These are exclusive to Audible. You can also get free access to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, delivered every day by the Audible app. You say, I don't have time to read the newspaper. Yeah, you do. You have time for the newspaper to be read to you.
Yeah, you do, punk.
And the convenience. Oh, the app is incredible. I just got a new car, and it's got the fancy Apple CarPlay in it. And guess what popped right up on the dash when I turned it on? The Audible app.
Yeah,
so it's everywhere. Best. It's so great.
I've been preaching to people about the Audible app for so many years, and because of the fact that they unleash so much Star Wars content, that is almost what I use it for exclusively. And I love all the other great features that they have to offer, but I am locked into Star Wars audiobooks galore on Audible.
Yeah, it's so great. It's one of the most bulletproof apps. It will never let you down.
Bulletproof. Perfect.
Yeah, you can be at the gym. You can be commuting like me, on the go, on any device. It's always going to pick up right where you left off. And you can start listening with a 30-day Audible trial and your first audiobook plus 2 Audible originals, all free. Just go to audible.com/RFR, or you can text RFR to 500-500. That's text RFR to 500-500. And of course, you'll find the full history of Star Wars audiobooks. It doesn't matter whether it's Legends, whether it's the new canon.
I'm trying to tell you.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah, the latest Star Wars Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, narrated by the great Mark Thompson. He's been doing the Star Wars audiobooks for many, many years. It's absolutely fantastic. And our good friend Cleveland Chris is currently reading Star Wars. Just read actually Star Wars Master and Apprentice, and he liked it quite a bit. He's sort of our he's my resident reader. He reads them for me.
Oh, there you go. He reads them so you don't have to.
That's right. And then he tells me all about them.
And I've heard a lot of good stuff about this book, so I will be diving into that because I love me some. Oh, yeah, sure, some Qui-Gon Jinn, he's massive. Absolutely massive.
Maybe they get Jimmy Mack to do one of these Qui-Gon books.
Yes.
These days.
Yes.
Do that. But you don't have to wait. You can start listening with a 30-day Audible trial. Once again, that first audiobook plus 2 Audible originals for free. Visit audible.com/RFR. That's audible.com/RFR. Or text RFR to 500-500.
massive.
Hello, my friends. This is Moralo Evol, and today I heard one of my guards say, "May the 4th be with you." Sounds very suspicious. Moralo Evol suggests you be on your guard the whole day.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, Mark Hamill making news. If you haven't seen this, this showed up right after, I want to say the day or two after the release of the trailer for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Somebody did a Photoshop mashup, and they took the shot of Billy Dee reprising his role as Lando in Episode 9 when he's laughing and enjoying himself at the helm of the helm, that was very Star Trek, I shouldn't say that, at the controls in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, and surrounded him with the sequel trilogy era faces of Harrison Ford as Han Solo, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, and Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker.
Yes. And if you look at the photo, doesn't it look like everyone is having a big laugh at Han's expense?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Lando's just cracked wise on Han. Han's kind of looking grizzled. Everybody, like Carrie's kind of, or Leia, she's kind of laughing and shaking her head a little bit. Luke's back there having a belly laugh, looking homeless as he does.
Well, it's an interesting collection of photos. I can tell you that Han Solo shot is from The Force Awakens as the Falcon is approaching Takodana. That is directly taken from the film. The Billy Dee photo is obviously directly taken from the Episode 9 trailer. Yeah. The Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill pictures, I believe, are taken when the cameras weren't rolling.
This is bonus content stuff. This is Mark having a laugh on the set of Episode 8.
If it does tie into a scene, it could be that one moment when he sort of tricked Rey. It was a deleted scene where he tricked Rey into believing that the Octu nuns were, or whatever those.
Lesson 3, right? Wasn't that Lesson 3 that never showed up in the movie?
That's the only time that Mark really displayed any sort of rich personality, and it was in a deleted scene. As far as like having a sense of humor,
right?
I mean, you could say there's certain moments he has here and there. That moment when he tickles Daisy's hand with that reed, to me that feels. A lot of people have said a lot about that moment, but to me, I don't know if it feels really Luke Skywalker, but it feels very Mark Hamill to me.
Yes.
It almost seemed, to me that people have criticized that moment. People have criticized every moment in The Last Jedi. Let's frickin' face it. But that moment feels like a Mark Hamill moment.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it.
That's the Force.
Really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
with
I've
you.
never felt anything. Ow!
That feels like a Mark Hamill moment. And I can roll with that because the line between Luke Skywalker and Mark Hamill to me is kind of thin. I always believe that Mark has a lot of ownership. That little moment there in The Last Jedi always made me feel like it was a Mark Hamill moment.
Yeah, and I didn't subscribe to a lot of the criticism of that particular scene. I liked it because it reminded me a little bit about the playfulness that Yoda had with Luke on Dagobah. And, you could draw some parallels. I mean, Luke's been in exile. Yoda was in exile. Look at Tom Hanks, in Castaway. Look how crazy he went with the... with the volleyball. I mean,
oh man, I would just embrace it. If it was me, I would just embrace it.
Oh yeah, I would love just to go, just total nut job on a deserted island sometime.
It's like, hey, we're off the grid for real here, baby. Let's figure out what's going on here. Let's poke around a little bit.
But I think what rubbed some people the wrong way was that this brilliant Photoshop montage, which is really beautiful. In fact, I have a version of it, and I've been talking about this on the show from time to time, is I'm a fanatic with the Black Series figures, and I have all of my sequel trilogy core characters like Leia, Han, Luke in their sequel trilogy looks all together. And I have literally, Jim, I think I have texted you photos and of the three of them together with Chewie and the droids, and I wrote what could have been, what could have been, because I have them all together. And
yes, I think if you rewind to some of our podcasts from 2012, when it was announced that new Star Wars films were on the horizon, specifically Episode 7, that announcement was made. And you'll hear me talking very wistfully about the necessity of having the big three in that Falcon cockpit together. Now, I pictured Chewie sitting in the chair that Lando is sitting in. But, of course, Chewie is in the back playing holo chess with R2 and 3PO and Lobot. We want Lobot in Episode 9. Am I right?
Yes.
We want Lobot in Episode 9. Yeah. We want Lobot in Episode 9. What do we do? Hashtag this stuff? No. Lobot Episode 9. What do we do? Lobot TROS? What do we do? How do we do this? Who knows anything about social media? Me and Swank have proven time and time again we don't know crap about social media.
No,
who knows?
Not. Well, anyway,
Lobot.
So this photo, which was this brilliant Photoshop montage. They ran the Star Wars the sequel trilogy logo treatment where you have the star and the war is separated by the title of the film. And what this person did is he or she, whoever it was, put what should have been as the title
on the photo. There is.
Oh, is there a credit?
Photo. Yeah, give credit where credit is.
All right, I don't know. Was it Steven? Does it say? I see Steven there.
Let me find it.
I don't know.
Star Wars. You know what? I think that what should have been. I mean. That's putting salt in the wound. I mean, that's a little unnecessary. I think the photo speaks for itself. And as Star Wars fans, we have often placed the characters in situations, whether it be action figures or personal headcanon. We've always put these characters in different circumstances and situations than they were actually in when you look at it on the silver screen. As a matter of fact, the first time I met Billy D. Williams was at a CBS radio station in Chicago back in 2002. And I had expressed to him that he was the most romantic character, the lady killer of Star Wars.
I really suddenly realized what a phenomenon that whole experience is.
After all this time, it just still keeps going on.
Yeah,
and
on. It's generational.
And what was cool about Lando is you were like the intergalactic Hugh Hefner. It was just, that was the sort of vibe that Lando gave out.
He didn't
I don't
have
think
a lot
anybody.
Of ladies. He didn't have a lot of ladies. He just had this one.
You knew though. He was so smooth. You knew that there was stuff going on off screen that we didn't know about. And so, I mean, I think anybody who played Lando couldn't have pulled it off the way you did.
Well, you're absolutely right about that.
There you go. There you go.
So the actors do bring a lot of their own personal charisma and personality into the characters.
Of course, there's an assumed backstory, and that was all part of the aesthetic that George wanted to give, not just the characters, but the props, the pieces, the ships, all the elements of these films. George wanted you to have an immediate reaction to and be able to see, oh, wow, right away they're talking about for 1,000 generations. I mean, there's a backstory, there's a history, there's wear and tear on the universe, and that was a big part of it. And subtlety, be damned. If there's a bad guy, we're going to make him look like the devil, and Darth Maul. By
the way, the photo, the Photoshop does have a watermark on it that says at Stephen Wayne Art. Stephen Wayne Art. So Stephen Wayne apparently is the guy who slapped this Photoshop together, and and rightfully so. It's initiating a lot of and eliciting a lot of emotional reaction from all sort of Star Wars fans. For me, as an original trilogy fan, it's bringing about like the right emotions. You know, this is what I always kind of pictured in my mind when they announced that these films were going to be thrown into production. I thought we'd at least have one shot of these core characters in.
Well, that is the whole point of this. The whole point of this is as we turn back the clock and we look at what we were talking about. You know, we were hanging by every thread looking for leaks and spoilers and news about who was going to sign. Carrie was signed. That was the first one we heard. Then we heard that Harrison Ford was signed. Then finally Mark Hamill was signed. Okay, you've signed them all. We've got it. Let's do it. Right?
What's the first mental image in your mind?
Of course, is the three of them on the Falcon in the cockpit.
Circa present tense.
Yeah. Of course. Now, that didn't happen, right? They reunited the Beatles so that they could all have their own solo album. I keep using that metaphor, and I think that it's very apropos. But so this image went out, and Jim, you said you didn't really care for the caption. I thought it was fine. What should have been?
It's unnecessary.
Well, okay, fine.
You got to telegraph it like that.
Well,
I mean, it's not like I'm offended by it or anything. I just think, it's just,
Well, he's making a point. He's saying, you know what, I'm going to call this movie Star Wars What Should Have Been. All right? So he's not leaving any room for doubt here. This is what he intended by it. So this catches the eye of Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill, who's a big user of social media, especially on Twitter, has a huge following. And he retweets this photo, and he does hashtag missed opportunities. Missed opportunities. Well, this thing gets retweeted 24,000 times, at least at the time of this freeze frame of history. 116,000 likes, 4,034 comments. I mean, when Mark does something, the internet notices, the Twitterverse notices. So Mark says, hashtag missed opportunities.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing that I want to make very, very clear about this in the way I see it. And Jim illustrated it perfectly without any prompting. He said moment. The word moment. We all expected to have the moment. Now, this doesn't mean that the whole saga, the whole trilogy, sequel trilogy, is the four of them or the three of them on board the Millennium Falcon. That's not what we were talking about. We were talking about at some point, there's going to be this moment where our heroes are reunited on the Millennium Falcon as they go off on one last adventure together. That's what we thought was going to happen. We knew that it was a passing of a torch.
Yeah.
We knew that. I mean, that was something that was made so obvious and so clear by the talking points that the actors were given in the hype up to The Force Awakens. Literally those words. Mark Hamill himself, it's a passing of a torch. It's the passing of the torch. This is about a new generation of characters. That was always going to be the case. And nobody was disputing it. Nobody was saying that they didn't want it. Everybody was waiting eagerly because they knew that the payoff, if you were an original trilogy fan, if you've been a fan of this stuff, as Jon Favreau said, for the last 40-some years, this was going to be your payoff. The passing of the torch, but you were going to get the moment. The moment never happened. Mark Hamill has been very, very clear, and he has made comments about this, saying that it was a missed opportunity. In fact, he went so far as to say he was hoodwinked. He thought he was getting 3 films out of this. He really only gets 1 because he was only in the last couple of seconds of the first one. He's going to be a ghost, if anything, in the third one. So the second one was the only one that he got. And they signed him for 3 movies. Now, he puts this thing out and just says missed opportunities. Well, this was not about saying, oh, well, the sequel trilogy shouldn't have had Rey, shouldn't have had Poe, shouldn't have had Finn, shouldn't have had Rose, shouldn't have any of these characters. That's not what he's saying. That's not what anybody is saying here in this case. What they're saying is what we wanted was this moment. This moment is so obvious. It's so clear. It's so self-evident that it would take, frankly, someone just being belligerent or ignorant to not provide it.
Hear, hear.
So Mark tweets this, and what happens? All hell breaks loose. Now, all of a sudden, Mark Hamill is getting this is political. This is a guy that practically makes a career out of going on Twitter every day and saying everything nasty he can about Republicans, what have you. That's his purview. But here's a case where he's not being political at all. This has nothing to do with politics. People are making it political.
They're marginalizing Mark for his age.
Oh, yeah.
And in doing so, they're also adding on Harrison and Carrie and Billy D, who at 82 years old should be applauded for his ability to step back into his role that he created in 1980. God bless him. Hey, listen, none of us are immune to the ravages of time on the human body. We all are going to experience it. God bless us if we do. To marginalize these legendary actors, Hamill, who had spent years and years on the shelf because he was labeled as that Luke Skywalker guy and unhireable. Harrison Ford, who's built a tremendous career and is in the Hollywood Hall of Fame, in my book. You know, forget the stars on the sidewalk. This guy is a true, legitimate Hall of Famer for his career.
Maybe one of the last real movie stars. When you think movie star,
yes,
that's Harrison Ford. Clark Gable,
Sly Stallone, who's still around, Bruce Willis, those guys still kind of are carrying the torch a little, but there's something about Harrison that adds a tremendous air of legitimacy because you know Harrison Ford's a no BS guy. He never got sucked in by the system. And Harrison Ford has always called his own shots throughout his career. Now he's just a guy who is grateful at his age to be able to get these roles. You know, Mark Hamill too. I mean, God, Mark Hamill, I'm so thankful and grateful that Mark has had this renaissance in his career. It's richly deserved, long overdue, and something that benefits everyone. So Mark is just expressing a little bit of his well-deserved ownership of the role of Luke Skywalker. If there's anyone who is going to make a commentary about the role of Luke or the character of Luke who would earn more respect from me, is a guy named George Lucas. The next one is Mark Hamill. Those are my top two guys on the totem pole. But that's just me, you know. I'm not talking about how the business works. Mark acknowledges many times that, you know, he understands how the business works. But in reality, I think when it comes to having a clear idea and definition about what makes Luke Skywalker tick, there are only two people to talk to, and that's George Lucas and Mark Hamill.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting about this is that many people, whether you like The Last Jedi or you don't, will agree that that was really the performance of Mark Hamill's career.
I loved it.
He turned in one of the most convincing and greatest performances that he'd ever performed before on screen. Knowing the whole time he's writhing inside in vehement disagreement with the direction that they're taking the film and the character. He's very open about that. But he's such a pro that not only does he do what he's being paid to do, but he does it ridiculously well. And so when he has the opportunity and he sees this graphic, this Photoshop montage of these great iconic, I mean, you can't really get more iconic than these characters. You know, maybe the crew of the Starship Enterprise would be the only thing that would rival them. And so, of course, the reaction went beyond just, laughing at the age of these characters. It went into just some real downright nasty stuff and accusations that of all people, there's really, I can't think of anyone that has sung the praises of Daisy Ridley more online than Mark Hamill. I don't think you'll find a bigger Daisy Ridley fan than Mark Hamill. And so all of these accusations that sprung up as a result of this tweet, saying that Mark was taking a big crap on the work of the people that put together the sequel trilogy.
And
that
that's
Mark was
putting it mildly compared to some of these tweets that I'm looking at on my screen right now.
Sure.
Which we will not obviously go through on this show. But, I mean, just the sampling that I'm seeing, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
But am I surprised? I don't think so.
No, because these are the type of people that are going to take a big steaming dump on a cultural icon like Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker because he laments the fact that he didn't get time on screen with his friends, people and characters that are responsible for his career and what he might have been looking forward to at the class reunion. You know, Mark talks about the last day on set of Return of the Jedi, and he said, yeah, we all felt like we were graduating from high school. We were hanging up our, cleaning out our lockers. And we didn't think we'd ever see each other again. And then you get back to the reunion, and you want to hang out with your friends, even just for a moment. And again, that's the whole point of this. No one is saying that this should have been the movie or the movies. What people are saying is that this could have been and should have been a moment in these movies. You got 3 movies. You got 7+ hours, 8+ hours of screen time. You can't make this happen. I mean, you brightest and best writers out there can't find a way to make this work.
Squeeze it in. And so I've heard people say, well, I would never, ever give up that incredible ending to The Force Awakens when Rey finally finds Luke. The whole movie is just this anticipation about where's Luke, who's Luke, what's Luke doing. Rey finally finds him at the end of the movie, and we finally have Luke in our presence, and he turns around. There's almost a glow coming off of him at that moment.
Yeah.
And then, they zoom in, and he looks tired and disheveled, befitting of a Jedi who has seen what he has seen, who has been through what he's been through. And the saber is extended toward him, and he looks at it. And there's a sign of doubt, there's a sign of resignation, and there's a sign of destiny in his eyes. I mean, there's just something about that scene. You knew that Luke would never be able to escape. I mean, that was never even an issue on my mind at that moment about him escaping. But because I figured he was in exile for a very significant, profound reason that would tie into the rest of the saga other than something that was rooted in self-loathing, rooted in defeat, rooted in failure, and rooted in a sense of, I give up. And I never found what the exact impetus was for him to come to the conclusion that he was at when we finally meet up with him in The Last Jedi. I never was able to connect those dots because I think a lot of the most interesting stuff about Luke Skywalker's history has been left off screen at this moment. And I don't want a book to fill it in. I don't want a comic book to fill it in. I want to see it as a cinematic experience. I don't even want to see it as a Disney Plus streaming series. I want to see it on the silver screen because that's where Luke Skywalker always belongs. And I think there's a reverence that I have toward Luke Skywalker that's based in that mentality because that's where it comes from. I mean, that's where the roots run deepest for me with Luke Skywalker is putting him on a pedestal. How he evolved into... So I don't want to jump to conclusions because, again, we've only seen 66% of the story. There's still a lot more story to be told. And we don't know what the impact of Luke's sacrifice is going to have on the conclusion of the saga. With the title, The Rise of Skywalker, I'm very optimistic that Luke's sacrifice is going to have a tremendous and profound impact on the remainder of the story. And I hope he comes back as a Force ghost. I want frickin' Force ghost. Damn it, I want Force Ghost.
All right. Well, the story at hand here is more about the internet's treatment of Mark Hamill. Now, Mark Hamill, again, has been carrying on for all of the causes out there online, but then he crosses the line by, for one moment, insinuating that these characters step into the spotlight ahead of the characters that have been created for this sequel trilogy, and that's it. How dare he? How dare he claim that these iconic characters have a moment together? And you've got people saying, I love this. This guy on Twitter, not gonna lie, this movie would be boring as F. This movie. Hey, I got news for you, whoever you are. I'm not going to give you your name. You're not a Star Wars fan, dude. I got to tell you, if you think a movie reuniting Lando, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, and Han Solo after 40 years would be boring as F, you're not a fan. Move along.
Or how about this one, who called Mark a crusty, bitter A, you absolute buffoon? I mean, it's just how, I mean, what? Mark Hamill is making himself accessible. This is a Hollywood legend. This is Luke Skywalker. And he's making himself accessible to you on Twitter, and you were going to crap all over him just because he retweeted a photo that he did not create, he just felt inspiration by, and you're going to tag him with all these labels and all this terrible language. I'm shocked at some of the stuff I'm seeing on my screen right now. Absolutely shocked. I will stand with Mark forever on this notion, because that's the first thing I thought of when I heard that the sequel trilogy was in motion, was the big three in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought?
Brainer.
Jim, who would have thought that a photo like this of Lando, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, and Han Solo after 40 years would cause controversy? This is a controversial thing in this day and age.
What?
You can't even say. This defies any and all description.
So our friends see this and they go, hey, you guys are the big Star Wars fans. You have the podcast. What's going on with all these nut jobs who are attacking Mark Hamill? They think we're responsible for it.
Yeah.
Come on. Show some common decency, you guys. This is disgusting. So Mark responded. Finally, he responded.
Oh, yeah, this is what he does. And I got to disagree with Mark, but, he's trying to take the high road.
Why do you want to disagree with Mark?
I want to disagree with Mark because he apologizes.
He does not apologize. Read his response.
He explains.
Since when does defining your stance on something?
Okay, all right, that's fair enough.
When does that qualify as an apology?
All right, you're right. Words mean things, and you're right. I'm going to give you this one. This was not an apology. I just resent the fact that Mark was put in. No, he doesn't say he's sorry. I just hate the fact that he was put in this position. I feel like this is a little bit of eating crow. It does stop short of an apology. So here was Mark's reply to this. After the uproar, he said, saw a pic of me with Billy D. Carrison, which was his nickname for Carrie Fisher. Carrison and Harry. Posted it because I miss them. Nothing more, nothing less. I love the new cast too, and didn't mean to get everyone's knickers in a twist. Maybe I should have just posted a bunch of hashtag endgame spoilers instead. Hashtag relax and have fun, people. And an emoji with the winky tongue out face.
Now,
and then he posted he has a photo. So this is the same photo, but with one addition. Lurking behind Luke Skywalker and Han Solo is the Bruce Timm version of the Joker from Batman the Animated Series, and a green lightsaber. Of course, if it was the Joker, it'd have to be the green lightsaber ignited behind him. So Mark, of course, having some fun here. And one of my favorite expressions is that words mean things. Say what you mean what you say. And you're right. The words "I'm sorry" are not there. It felt to me as an apology.
He's clarifying his
but he is
position.
clarifying. You're right.
Which is only fair because he reposted a photo with a hashtag, which can often be interpreted in weird ways and vague ways. And if anyone should know that, it's us here at Rebel Force Radio. How you doing? Follow us on Twitter at RFR Rebel Force.
So what I love about this is that who comes? You know, you need one guy to douse a little bit of cold water on a hot situation. Who is going to bring the cool that you need? None other than Billy D. Williams himself at RealBDW on Twitter. And he replies at Hamill himself, "You should be used to getting everyone's knickers in a twist. Part of your charm, man." So here comes Billy D to come and kind of lighten the mood a little bit. And
cool it!
Yeah, cool it, as he
did with us.
Yeah, right. And Mark Hamill saw that. No, he replies to Billy D, total exoneration, no collusion. Thanks at Real BDW. There's no one more capable of assessing charm than you. Love to you and all the cast members of hashtag The Rise of Skywalker from your pal. And as he often signs a lot of his tweets, Mar, M-A-R, and then the emoji of a camel. So Mar Camel, hashtag Master Knicker Twister.
What does that mean?
Well, because he was saying that he didn't mean to get everyone's knickers in a twist.
Oh,
so
I see.
He's the
because
master.
Before, remember, he called himself Master Hamster or something.
Yeah, the hamster or something.
That's what I'm like. I saw that, and I'm like, I've been a Star Wars fan for 40-something years, and never once did I ever consider calling the guy Master Hamster. Saying, yeah, maybe I don't know what the hell's going on anymore.
Well, you know, I feel that way. And, you know, there's a lot of this accusations being thrown around about.
You know, we heard this. A lot of ageism.
Yeah.
A lot of marginalization over an actor like Mark Hamill because of he's only in his 60s. To me, that seems like homeboy territory, you know? A guy in his 60s. Are you kidding me? We're all going to get there way quicker than you can acknowledge. I'm not there. Jason's not there. You know, Mark is a guy who we respect as someone who has blazed the trail for so many Hollywood actors. There was a very small list of actors who embodied their character, who became really known for their character before Star Wars. I mean, you look at the obvious ones, you know, Clayton Moore as a Lone Ranger, and of course, Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, John Wayne as Rooster Cogburn, all of those guys who built up those personas over the years.
Adam West is Batman.
But Adam had a weird career outside of Batman.
He did, but I mean, he was Batman. I mean, he
was Batman,
no question about that.
And also occasionally visible in softcore porn late at night on your local cable provider.
Wow.
But hey, that's
didn't know
Adam
about
West.
that.
What?
I didn't know about that.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. I had no idea that Adam West had a softcore porn career.
Gosh, I can't believe I'm bringing this up on the show. But I do believe that there are a couple of credits on his IMDb that will link you back to some softcore pornographic material that you might see on Cinemax late at night.
All right. Moms, dads, driving your kids to school. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Back to your regularly scheduled Rebel Force Radio.
Here's my advice. Parents, don't tell your kids. Kids, don't tell your parents.
Brilliant.
Back to your regularly scheduled Rebel Force Radio.
So anyway, what bothers me, again, about this so much is that Mark Hamill is a guy that has cultivated a lot of goodwill for a lot of causes, political, social, otherwise, online. And to brand Mark Hamill, or really to make this some sort of political controversy, is just beyond the pale. This is like when you run out of bullets and you just throw the gun. I mean, this would be silly and laughable if it wasn't so sad at the same time, that all Mark Hamill is doing is echoing the sentiment that a lot of fans have had, he himself has had, for a personal reason. The fans have had it because they want to see their heroes up on the big screen one more time, teaming up to face off the ultimate evil. Yes. Mark Hamill, the actor, is taking this at a personal level, saying, these are friends of mine. These are people that, I mean, we can't discount what the loss of Carrie Fisher means to a guy like Mark Hamill, the idea that this reunion on screen was at one time possible, but is now impossible due to Carrie's real death, Harrison Ford's cinematic death, Mark Hamill's cinematic death. Again, no one disputes, disagrees, or otherwise rejects the idea that this was a passing of the torch. We knew it going in. But we all assumed that there would be this moment. And this particular artist, this Steven, who put this together in such a way that it sort of gave us the, no different than me with my action figures up on the shelf, the what if. Anybody that claims that a movie that has that moment of those actors at that age and playing those characters once more together would be boring as F. You never were, never are, and never will be a fan of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Never.
Absolutely.
So stop playing online that you're a fan of Star Wars, because you aren't.
Well, that's the core right there, baby. Don't mess with the core. All right, don't mess with the core.
Right.
So,
all right.
If you have something to say about that, send us an email, or better yet, a voicemail at 1-708-320-1RFR. That's 1-708-320-1737. We want to hear how you stand on that specific issue, because I don't think there's anywhere else to stand. Mark Hamill himself actually approached this issue just recently when he spoke to The Hollywood Reporter on their podcast Awards Chatter, hosted by Scott Feinberg. And Mark talked a little bit about dealing with fans on social media.
Well, I love teasing fans on the internet. They call it trolling. I call it teasing.
Right.
Of course, when you've been the trickster and the joker, nobody takes anything you say seriously. It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, that's right. He loves it. He owns it. This is the thing that's so great about Mark Hamill, is the fact that he is what you see. He's a ham. He's an old school Hollywood guy, somebody who came into Hollywood in the 70s, but carrying on the legacy of and all of the things that made Hollywood great in the golden age. Whether it be the Laurel and Hardy stuff, or Jimmy Cagney, or Broadway musicals. I mean, all that is a part of Mark Hamill. He just loves the business. Mm-hmm. He loves the business.
Absolutely. So we just played that clip from the Hollywood Reporter Awards Chatter. You can find it when you're doing searches on iTunes or wherever. Look for THR Awards Chatter. And this is a really cool podcast, and they did a great episode with Mark Hamill as he's out there promoting his role as Talos in Nightfall, and which is a very cool show. Check it out, Nightfall. But so Mark's out there promoting this, and of course people are going to ask him about his career, specifically Star Wars. What I like about this conversation with Mark gives him a full hour. It's on the Awards Chatter podcast. Scott Feinberg asks Mark about all aspects of his career. The early days, the auditions, the soap operas, Star Wars.
I Dream of Jeannie, the animated series.
I don't know if they talked about that.
There's a couple of episodes of the Talkin' Tunes podcast that you can find, and Mark is a guest on that show, and he goes through his whole career of animation, voiceover animation, and he actually did a voice on an old Hanna-Barbera animated treatment of I Dream of Jeannie. And anyway, that was one of his first gigs. I mean, that goes back before 8 is Enough, I believe.
Well, they don't talk about that specifically in this interview, but it is a good overview of Mark's career. And Mark does repeat a lot of the similar talking points that we've heard time and time again, because Mark has been so he's been so generous with his time with fans at Star Wars Celebration, going up there and just basically letting it all hang out. And with Mark, it's a stream of consciousness. It's no BS. He's the real deal. Mark Hamill does not filter his opinions. And this is something that I've always appreciated as someone who has followed behind the scenes of Star Wars since the very beginning, and I've devoured Mark Hamill interviews over the years. And so the THR Awards Chatter podcast, Mark appeared there at the beginning of April, and we have some highlights here for you. Check out the whole show at The Hollywood Reporter. But what I wanted to focus in was specifically Mark and how he's dealing with, because of course he's very outspoken. We all know where Mark Hamill stands on the way Luke Skywalker has been depicted in The Last Jedi. He even spoke about it on the bonus material on The Last Jedi Blu-ray. Very candidly. Very candid from Mark there.
And to the credit of Disney and Lucasfilm, they let all of those comments and all of those interview clips hang out right there. So no one was trying to hide it or cover it up.
No one ever has. So Mark talks a little bit about how, excuse me. Mark talks a little bit about how he's been dealing with the reality of the way his character is being portrayed in the sequel trilogy.
Well, it's certainly been challenging. And by the way, everyone talks about the shock of realizing that on Force Awakens I don't come into the last page. A bigger shock to me was them killing Han Solo before Luke could ever see his best friend again.
Right.
I mean, it might be so selfishly motivated, but I said, holy cow, that's a real missed opportunity. Even having the three of us together, even briefly.
Right.
I pitched Abrams on the idea of, you can still have me come in at the very end, but how about this? How about Leia's trying to contact me telepathically? She gets frustrated because there's no answers, so she rushes to the new Death Star.
Right.
That's 3 so far, and she almost gets there when she's stopped by 2 stormtroopers, and just before she's abducted, one stormtrooper turns to the other, blows him away, pulls off his helmet, and says, "Hi, sis, I'm here to rescue you." I said, "It'll blow the roof off the joint." I'm still in at the very end, and I think it's more effective to have people that really have a history with Han Solo witness his death and be unable to stop it.
Right.
His wife, the mother of his child, his best friend, instead of 2 characters that have known him, 20 minutes?
Right.
But, they get the keys to the kingdom.
Right.
And they get to, they're the deciders.
Wow. Do you just hear the passion in his voice?
Yes.
I mean,
but let's break down what he says.
This is real passion. And I love what he says here because I have often made the comparison. If you've read William Shatner's book, Star Trek Movie Memories, and there was a concept for Star Trek Generations, which was going to be the film that was going to pass the torch. Sound familiar? Yeah. Pass the torch from the original cast to the Next Generation cast, who had already proven themselves across, 7 seasons of a great TV series. This is going to be the passing of the torch. And the original concept art for the film was the classic Enterprise from the films, the classic films. So the NCC 1701-A, the more modern version, facing off, firing photon torpedoes at the NCC 1701-D, which was the Enterprise under the command of Captain Picard. Right. And they had this amazing concept of the 2 ships firing on each other. Until finally the writers came to the Paramount brass and said, we just can't figure out a way to do it. We can't figure out a way to make it happen. We can't figure out a way to make, the fans happy on both sides. And it's like, you know what? I would say, you know what, guys? You're right. You can't. So you're fired, and I'm going to hire writers who can. Oh. So when you hear Mark talk about these ideas, and then you hear guys like I think it was, I don't know if it was Ryan Johnson or J.J. Abrams saying, well, we were really struggling because every time the script called for Luke Skywalker, he just scooped up all the attention from the other characters and the other actors, and we just couldn't find a way to make it work. It's well, you know what? Work harder. And we've got a character that's begging for that kind of, that can command that kind of attention.
Well, I thought the balance, it could have been easily executed if you have your big characters from the original trilogy kicking off everything with the sequel trilogy. Now, this is what if, okay? And I'm also violating my rule of analyzing the Star Wars that isn't as opposed to the Star Wars that is. But we're right in the thick of this thing. I mean, this is happening. This is a now moment. We are dealing in the present. I'm not looking back nostalgically on the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy. I am eyeballing this thing as it's unfolding in front of us right now. And what I had honestly expected of this trilogy was to place our big characters up in the forefront from the very beginning. Luke, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Lando, R2, 3PO, and Lobot. All right, the Lobot thing's a new addition, but for some reason I just kind of like him tagging along, you know? I kind of dig the idea of a little Lobot action happening, you know? Maybe it's a Sheldon Norton. He kind of reminds me of Sheldon again. I have a soft spot. I collect action figures that look like Sheldon, and I want characters in Star Wars that
Can we
remind me of
please
Sheldon. What
get
a great guy.
Can we get Sheldon to commit to some Lobot cosplay at the next celebration?
Please.
Can we make that happen?
Here's a true story. At the Disney parks, when they were doing the hyperspace hoopla, actors from the Clone Wars and Rebels were there and everything. It was a big whoop-de-doo. It was such a big whoop-de-doo that Kathleen Kennedy herself attended a Star Wars Weekends event when she first was put in the position of control of the Star Wars brand. And she saw DJ Lobot on stage, spinning tunes. And that was the end of DJ Lobot. She pulled the plug on that, and then the next thing to go was Hyperspace Hoopla, and all of it. That was all to protect the integrity of the characters. She didn't want them being lampooned as they were going to launch a new Star Wars trilogy. Same thing with Star Wars Detours, shelved, because nobody wanted to see Darth Vader being presented as this buffoon as they're relaunching Star Wars. I think that, when I look at that, I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think we'll ever see Star Wars Detours? I think absolutely yes. But after this sequel trilogy is said and done with this December, and I'm really looking forward to this December. I'm looking forward to the entire thing coming to an end. And I think greener pastures are ahead of us without all the expectation, without all the fan pressure, without all the fans who know more than the filmmakers and all that stuff. I really think the whole thing needs to be blown up if Star Wars is to survive.
Yeah, I mean, Mark does in that last quote, he does bring up a good point. Clearly, having Chewbacca there to witness the death of Han Solo as a character is a big moment. It's a huge moment. And it's in Chewie's roar that all the fans of Han Solo kind of cried out in that moment. But what Mark was saying is, why not have the character of Han Solo surrounded by those who knew and loved him best? And going back to Star Trek, the reason I brought that up is because also, once they got into writing the film that we actually saw with Star Trek Generations, you'll notice that in the movie, the finished film, it is Chekhov and Scotty that witnessed the death of Kirk, or what they perceived to be the death of Kirk in that moment. In the original script, it was supposed to be Nimoy and DeForest Kelley.
Hello.
Spock and McCoy, those who knew and loved Kirk best. But, of course, the tightwads at Paramount couldn't bear the idea of giving Leonard Nimoy or DeForest Kelley the money they wanted for just a quick, cameo. So, of course, they sacrificed the character, the legacy of the character, for a few $100,000 or whatever it might have been at the time.
And I mean, it's like at the time,
right?
The last thing you said, at the time, but no one appreciates the legacy of the characters going forward, like the future legacy.
Yeah,
you have to be careful with all of that, and I cut these studios a little bit of slack because the age of the big franchise on a studio scale, I think is still rather new. George owned Star Wars. He controlled it all. And that's why it stagnated ultimately. And if it was to survive, he had to sell it. So now we're dealing with this new reality, the new normal, where a big corporation owns Star Wars. And it's not a singular vision anymore. But yet it's based on a singular vision, essentially.
Right.
Essentially. I know there's so many names that can be given huge gratitudes for their contributions to Star Wars, but still, George Lucas is, in all ways, shapes, and forms, the token. He is the Frank L. He's the Frank L. Baum,
Yep.
He is the Mark Twain. He is the Mark frickin' Twain when it comes to Star Wars.
Yep.
Samuel L. Clements Lucas. I love the mustache.
He is. And who was it that JJ had to appeal to in order to wrap this saga up? It was George Lucas.
The George.
Who was it that as more news is breaking about The Mandalorian and what role George Lucas actually had in helping to develop that series? We're not talking about a set visit. We're hearing information that points to actual collaboration.
Yeah.
Long-term collaboration between George Lucas and Jon Favreau.
I was there at the Four Seasons Hotel in 2009 for an evening with George Lucas to benefit the Gene Siskel Film Foundation. And George was there and Favreau was there. And I talked to them both. I hung with them both. I literally hung with them both. And Melody. It was amazing that security did not drag me out of this place, but there I was.
Well, they were preoccupied with those other Star Wars podcasters that were there that night.
None. No, I was there with Dean Richards from WGN, legendary Chicago journalist, Hosea Sanders from ABC 7 Chicago, Bill Zwecker from the Chicago Sun-Times. I could run down the whole thing like it happened yesterday because I remember it like it was yesterday because I was there with George freaking Lucas, and it was one of the coolest experiences I ever had as a Star Wars podcaster. And I made many connections on that day, and I'm very grateful for all of them that I made. But the most fulfilling experience for me was to spend all of this time in this room with George and just watch how he kind of navigates people who throw themselves at him, who act very professionally around him, and family members like Melody. You know, I was seeing the full gamut of Lucas. You read all this stuff about George and you have all these assumptions about the man, but when you're actually able to be there with him for an extended period of time, it was about 90 minutes. We were in this little room together before they opened up the ballroom doors and all these people came upon George like these predators in the night stalking their prey. And I was standing right next to the man. I'll never forget this moment. I was standing right next to George Lucas. And he kind of like his shoulders sort of sunk a little bit and he deflated for a second. And I swear I heard an audible, huh, as the doors opened and they came upon him. And I saw it from his perspective, too, which was really interesting because I was standing shoulder to shoulder with the man. And they came upon him like hordes in the night. It was like Night of the Living Dead. It was like The Walking Dead. Here they go. they're all holding out stuff at him, and pens and stuff.
You're George Lucas.
He graciously signed everything that was put in front of him. And he was signing away, and I'm standing next to him, and all of a sudden the light bulb went off over my head. I was like, holy crap, I better get George Lucas's autograph. So I turned around, and on the table there was a program for the evening, that they put together with all the sponsors in there. And I just sort of, slid it in there as he was just sort of, his hand was kind of just moving in the air in the shape of his signature. So you would kind of place whatever you wanted him to sign. Hoped you timed it right, And
now that would be good fodder for the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel, since we're talking nostalgically about that whole moment in time. Maybe we could get that up there. Because I remember what a great moment that was, because I knew you were going there, and I knew that there was a possibility that you were going to get a chance to get the man on mic. And that was a huge deal when I got that text from you that it indeed had happened.
Yeah, it was
had happened.
I have to say, you asked me if any other podcasters were there. It really was the all-stars of Chicago and national media there. But, it was a small group, and it was mostly local because of Melody Hobson's ties to the city of Chicago. And, of course, George and Melody maintain a residence here, and they're very tightly connected with elements of the Chicago community.
Now, if memory serves, Jim, don't you hold the distinction of being the first to actually capture Melody Hobson on microphone talking about Star Wars?
Yeah, Steve Sansweet told me that I'm the only person who ever actually talked to Melody Hobson about Star Wars. And it was just a brief little thing because it was a line of people. It was George, and then it was Melody, and then it was Jon Favreau. And so I'll put these interviews up on the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. There's almost something that embarrasses me a little bit about it, because I was obviously super nervous going into this thing. There were a lot of questions I wanted to ask George Lucas, but I didn't want to cross any sort of line, any kind of boundaries with him. And I had a sense that those boundaries were there. and I just was, fanboy.
No one blames you. No one blames you
for
that.
And before I did this, I've been on many press lines, okay? I've been to the Oscars. I've been to Comedy Relief and done one-on-one with guys like Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, and Billy Crystal, those guys. I hung out on the rooftop at Radio City Music Hall. I was there at the Billboard Music Awards. I was there at the MTV Music Awards, and I hung out in the Red Hot Chili Peppers trailer.
Hey, you know what?
After the show. But this moment.
I've been on the rooftop of Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah, but you didn't do what I did up there.
Well, definitely not. No, I'm there with Broadway people.
Oh, no.
I'm not there with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
And so, listen.
I'm up there with jazz hands and and box steps.
But, I've had a lot of red carpet experiences in my life due to my radio career and my broadcasting career. But nothing was like that moment when I was with George Lucas at the Four Seasons in downtown Chicago on that press line.
You're an 8-year-old kid all of a sudden again. Of course you are. This is like sitting on Santa's lap for you. This is a huge moment.
Right before I got in the car to go downtown, I went to my son's Little League baseball game, and there was a kid on the team, and they were all cheering for him. This kid was a superstar Little League player, so everyone was yelling his name constantly. His name was Lucas.
Oh, my.
Lucas! They're all chanting this, and I'm like getting ready to go to this event to potentially be on the press line with George Lucas. The first time I'm ever going to talk, and the only time really that I talk one-on-one with George Lucas. And I have that thought in the back of my mind. And all during the Little League game, the parents are all yelling, Lucas. I'm like, I'm going nuts here. The pressure is on. So, that was those. So I'm going to put that. I'll put the evening with George Lucas up on YouTube.
The chemistry between Favreau and George Lucas goes all the way back to then.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure before then. But
we did not know of Jon Favreau's involvement with Star Wars: The Clone Wars and voicing Pre Vizsla. We did not know that. That was not public knowledge at the time of that event. And it was really a great banquet. I mean, there were all these Star Wars themed drinks, which I helped myself to in abundance. And we had some technical difficulties, so I only have half of the Q&A that Favreau did with George right after the dinner was served. And, I mean, it was like red carpet Chicago. All of the luminaries were there, media, film, and they were all there watching this Q&A with Favreau and George Lucas talking to George about his career. Yeah, I'll put up what I have on YouTube. I talked to George, I talked to Melody, and I talked to Favreau himself. I guess the time is now. A good time.
We should. But we have a couple more Mark Hamill clips before we sign off here. This goes back to the Hollywood Reporter, the podcast. Scott Feinberg is the host, and here Mark is talking about the relief that he felt when he looks back and at least got a moment on camera with Carrie Fisher in The Last Jedi.
At least I had that one scene with Carrie. We were never reunited, all of us together. But, I played it because I knew Luke was going to die, so it would be the last time I saw her. And it took on such a different meaning after the real-life events that it just throws me out of the movie. I haven't really been able to process that the way I should. And it's hard because you go out, when I did the press for The Last Jedi, obviously everyone wants to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So you find yourself endlessly grieving in public, and it's just hard. And it's still so sad. Mm-hmm. She had impeccable timing, except in this case, because, Harrison was more prominent in 7, I was more prominent in 8. She was meant to be more prominent in 9, but,
But
well, we knew that, and that was the, that we heard that in right after 7 was released. Some of the leaks, and likely some of these were on purpose leaks that said, "Oh, fear not, 7 is Harrison's movie, 8 is Mark's movie, and 9 will be Carrie's movie." And once Carrie passed away, we walked into Last Jedi. Our subsequent viewings of The Last Jedi were just much, much different because we thought, wait a minute, this throws the whole thing off track. Are you still going through with this? You're still going to kill off Luke Skywalker knowing that your ace in the hole for Episode 9 is not going to be there.
Wow, what a crazy thing that we're dealing with here. I mean, and it doesn't get talked about too often. But the impact of Carrie Fisher's death and the black cloud it has put over this entire sequel trilogy, to me as a fan emotionally. Yeah. Somebody like Carrie Fisher is a name that I have had in the bright lights of my life since 1977. And I worship her. I worship Carrie so much. And the emotional impact of her loss is something that I continue to feel, quite honestly. A question that I'm going to ask right now, which I never have before and I've never even thought about until this very moment, is does Carrie's unfortunate passing put that black cloud over the sequel trilogy in general? Is that something that maybe original trilogy generation fans feel? Or the extended generation I don't know if that impact has been felt on new fans, sequel trilogy generation fans. I don't know. Really, the only people I can ask are my sons, 16 and 20.
Yeah,
they're fresh on the scene. I imagine over the next 5 years, we're going to be hearing from podcasters who grew up strictly with the sequel trilogy, and their perspective might be very eye-opening.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think that I would have probably, if I'd have been part of the creative team, I would have probably made bigger changes as a result of Carrie's passing. If the arc of these films was to give each of the main trio sort of their moment in the sun, knowing that the third sunrise, so to speak, was not going to happen, I would have changed the second one. I really would have. It would have been quite easy, actually, to change the ending of the second of episode 8. That would then allow Luke's character, Mark's character of Luke, to continue on in a major way into that third film. I think you still, none of this is an attempt to diminish the new characters. One of the things that really frustrates me is in all of this talk about The Last Jedi, nobody wants to remember the fact that Finn, Rey, and Poe were absolutely adored after the release of The Force Awakens. We walked away from that film saying, "Give us more. What's going on with Rey? Who are Rey's parents? What's going on with Finn? What? You think he'll fight Phasma again? Is Finn going to desert again? What's going on with him and Poe? He's the new Han Solo. We can't wait to see more from him." Everybody was excited about those new characters. It often gets played as though it's a one or the other, and there was plenty of love for the new characters as well as idolation for the original characters at the same time. So, okay, we've heard from the original generation. Now let's switch gears here. We've got John Boyega, part of the new generation of Star Wars, talking to Josh Horowitz over at MTV. And Josh was there in the press gaggle at Star Wars Celebration. And John was on mic with Josh Horowitz. Jim, what kind of perspective is he bringing to this? This is right after the big panel for episode 9, the trailer, and the fans, and everybody's excited. John's excited. What does he have to say?
The Star Wars team-ups is what we all kind of love so much. We love the chemistry between the characters, and it's undeniable that John Boyega's Finn, had a lot of chemistry with Daisy Ridley's Rey in episode 7, The Force Awakens. And that was kind of lacking in episode 8. And now with episode 9 on the horizon, we're wondering, who is Finn going to be teamed up with in this episode? What I've been looking forward to is getting the big 3 of the sequel trilogy together, which is something we haven't really seen yet. So thankfully, John Boyega does confirm we'll probably be getting those moments.
A lot of it is Finn, Poe, and Rey and Janna all going through this big, massive adventure. Yeah. Myself and Oscar have been dying for the audience to experience what we're actually like in real life, our chemistry, and you only got to see a bit of that in 7. In 9, it's all over. It's great.
The fanfic is going to be reborn.
Honestly, it's like the bros. Like, it's such a bro moment. There's so many bro moments, and I love it.
Yes.
Bro moments.
Bromance. Yes, that's what we got going on right here. So I'm very encouraged by what I'm hearing, because a big part of what made Star Wars work for me was the chemistry. It was the chemistry with Han, Luke, and Leia, with those actors, Mark, Harrison, and Carrie. It was in the prequel trilogy. It was Ewan, Natalie, and, of course, Hayden. There was a chemistry there. I like that. I want to see that being replicated in the sequel trilogy, but we haven't had that opportunity yet because you haven't had the big 3 together. And the big 3 of the sequel trilogy clearly is Finn, Poe, and Rey. Give us those big adventure moments. I think we're going to get it in episode 9. I think it's going to mean a lot. And what's interesting is that John Boyega said something in that soundbite we just heard, which could actually be applied in a Rebel Force Radio promo.
So many bro moments, and I love it.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. But, you know, I mean, that's something that ties the chemistry of Star Wars together, are those moments that are really, they really found their foundation in friendship. And that's what I get from Han, Luke, and Leia. And I do get that from Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan. But I really want to see it now from Finn, Poe, and Rey. And I think we're going to get it in episode 9. Boyega talks a little bit about, I think this is a telling moment he has here with Josh Horowitz from MTV News. And Josh, we've acknowledged Josh over the years on this show as someone who is inserted into a lot of these press line situations with the added advantage of being a diehard Star Wars fan. I don't know nothing about Josh Horowitz. I've never met him. We've never talked to him on the show. But he comes off as someone who is very well schooled in Star Wars. And so I always appreciate his sound bites because he cuts right to the chase. And so he asked John Boyega about his future in Star Wars.
Do you think you're ever going to play this character again? I mean, if you're heart of hearts, would you be okay with that?
Honestly, at the bottom of my heart, I don't think I am. I feel like I really do feel that way.
I'm going to cry.
I honestly, no, seriously, this really is that movie. I think everyone doesn't believe it, but this is that war that just ends everything. So I'm just like, wow, you know.
Does it answer all the questions you think the fans want answered?
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
100%.
Wow, 100% answers the questions, and this really is that movie that ends the war.
Jason,
the Star War.
Are you reading between the lines here with John Boyega's response to the question about his future as Finn?
I mean, it sounds like he's saying, look, this is the end, and maybe his character, maybe it's not about this is the end of the Star Wars, but this is the end of Finn.
Yeah, the end of Finn. Yeah. Right there. You just summed it up right there. The end of Finn. I think just hearing that John Boyega statement, hearing the tone of his voice, I believe that Finn is going to come to an end in episode 9. I really do. I don't know how that rolls with all of you Finn bots out there. Is that what they call themselves, Finn bots?
No, I don't know what they are, but all I know is that in French, how you say the end is Finn.
Ah! This is the Finn, my only friend, the Finn. So, there you go.
There's not a better place to end it, right there.
I guess that's it.
This is the Finn.
So many bro moments, and I love it.
There it is.